Francisco Negrin, we are here in the Civic Opera House, right in front of the stage, about 20 minutes before the start of the final dress rehearsal of your new production of WERTHER. WERTHER is a piece that Lyric hasn't performed for, I think, more than 30 years. And so to a large number of people who will be coming to the performances, it will be a whole new experience. Tell them a little bit about what to expect.
Well, first of all, they're going to see an opera that's incredibly accessible and incredibly melodious. So even though it's not part of the really standard repertoire in America, it is a very beloved piece in the rest of the world, and quite rightly so. It's really incredibly beautiful and a very serious love story, I would say.
It's based on Goethe.
Yes, it's based on Goethe's novel. It's quite different from the novel, though. But like the novel, it really is a story about, let's say, the end of the 18th century. It's about how a certain society with its very nice values, very strict values, family values, and especially in a provincial town where the story takes place, in a provincial town in Germany, how this little world is suddenly invaded, if you like, by a young man with a whole new way of thinking, who brings in the first inklings of Romanticism to this world and wreaks havoc in a way on the minds of the people in this town who are not really ready for that kind of really high thinking.
So it has its roots in Enlightenment and it's invaded by Romanticism, a bit like Massenet as a beacon of the 19th century musical movement,
exactly.
Adapting Goethe.
Exactly, and it's quite interesting because I guess for people who don't know it, they may expect maybe a very 19th century piece, a very already fully romantic piece, or maybe more like a Puccini piece, which is 20th century, but very much in the feel of the melodrama of the 19th century. And it isn't quite that. It is as melodious as a Puccini opera and as accessible as that. Even more beautiful, I think, in many ways. But it is more detailed and more nuanced and more sensual. It's French, of course. So it's really amazing at creating atmosphere, and it's very colorist. You can already hear the future. Debussy and composers like that showing up there, and
but with all the melodies that are normally associated with 19th century music.
Exactly. It's one beautiful tune after another.
So it's a glorious score, and I've seen it many times over the years. Having grown up in the UK, it was a regular feature of Covent Garden's repertoire. It's often thought of as musically fantastic, but theatrically a little mushy. But your production is not at all mushy. Tell us a bit about it.
Yes, I guess, again, I think many people confuse it a little bit with the world of a Puccini opera, for example, which is meant to be a melodrama, and that's how it should be, and that's what we come for, to have a lovely, simple love story just told to us. This is a little bit more subtle, as it is a stronger psychological study of what is happening to these characters and why it's happening to them. And the music and the actually really beautiful libretto, I think, go into very great detail, a bit more like in the world of an Ibsen play or something like that, where you really understand little by little how the characters come to realize what is happening to them. And rather than being a melodrama, it's more of an actual tragedy. The difference being, for example, melodrama is boy meets girl and they can't be together, so we're all very sad. And that's that, and we just cry with them. This is different. This is how we see characters put into situations that they're not expecting or that they're not ready for, and we see how that alters their way of perceiving the world, and we see how they realize they're not going to be able to live this love relationship even if they did understand it and wanted it and did the right things for it. So they see their world crumble through their hands and lose it. And in that sense, rather than just being mushy and sentimental, it is truly moving.
And it takes a view of the characters that is possible only from our perspective as a 21st century audience with the knowledge of psychiatry and psychoanalysis that we have. And in many ways, what you're doing is exploring under the skin of the characters, particularly under the skin of Charlotte.
Yes, very much so. In the novel, Charlotte doesn't really exist very much. She's just this perfect girl that Werther obsesses about and invents a whole fantasy about. He doesn't ever really fall in love with her, he falls in love with the idea of love. In the opera, on the other hand, Charlotte is incredibly well described, and also her husband, Albert. And so, yes, with our psychological knowledge, as you say, we're able to go explore what is happening there. But actually, Massenet's music already does that. There's an incredibly
Yes.
strong dialectic between the music and the text, where the
Yes.
music really adds meaning to every
Yes.
phrase and explores the subtext.
One of the wonderful things about your production is that at no point do you depart from what is contained in the text and in the music.
No, in fact, I would say I really do a return to
Yes.
the truth, as it were. I really
Yes.
have really analyzed the French text and what its implications are in the actual French expressions, and in very typical French ways, the things that are not said, that
Yes.
are implied by what is said and through the use of language. And Massenet very clearly understanding that, then coming in and adding information. And I've really gone from that, rather than from the perceived notion of what the piece should be. I've actually gone to find out what it really is.
And your direction of the singers is extraordinarily specific. It's extraordinarily precise, and that really reads for us, the audience.
Well, thank you. I think that I'm very fortunate to have the cast that we have, both with Sophie Koch and Matthew Polenzani, who are both wonderful actors.
Yes.
I mean, much more so than one is ever meant to expect from an opera
Yes.
singer, really, especially such a high-level opera singer. They both are very detailed, wonderful theater actors who are totally capable of exploring this with me. And
Sir
they're
Andrew
very-
Davis in the pit really does seem to explore the score with exactly the precision and the subtlety that you are exploring theatrically on stage with the cast.
Absolutely. I think we really have a team, all of us together, where we really can tell the story in the right style.
Yes.
And in the right language. And I say that really, actually the right language, with the French really being spoken in the right way and with
Yes.
the right implications to each intonation.
To our 21st century eyes, Werther as a character is almost a stalker.
Yes.
His observation of Charlotte at the beginning and his instant obsession with her and his determination and desperation to catch her, whatever the consequences, makes him a rather unappealing character, humanized by the glorious music that Massenet gives him.
Yes, I think we go quite a long way in this production to get away from that annoying character that he's very often seen to be, because yes, he's clawing and insistent and a stalker, and a very depressed stalker, so not the kind of character you root for usually.
Yes.
But here we present him, I think, as we should, where he's basically a man who has a whole other perception of what the world is.
Yes.
And how he should see the world. He's the true romantic poet. He's a writer, he's a creator. He sees things in the world that others do not see. And as that, he can be perceived as annoying by the other people in the world that doesn't understand him. But we actually go along with him, hoping that the other characters, who are in fact the annoying ones for being so banal,
Yes.
we root for him to actually infect them a little bit
Yes.
with his poetry.
Your production has three very specific worlds. For quite a lot of the production, we experience those three worlds simultaneously. Werther has his world at the front of the stage, which is his private world, which is occasionally invaded by characters from elsewhere. Then we have the real world, the world of the characters, at times banal, at times naive, but nonetheless what is happening. And then we have Charlotte's dream world, the world of her fantasy, in which we are able to experience the subtext of her words and the innermost of her thoughts.
That's right. Yes, mostly I wanted to be able to show Werther in his intimacy, since he's a character who lives entirely in his mind and in his own little world. I wanted to show that visually to the audience. I wanted them to see a room where he has lots of drawings he's made of Charlotte, where he writes all these letters, a room where nothing exists other than his obsession for poetry, rather than for Charlotte specifically. It's just for the image of perfect womanhood in his beautiful poeticized world.
Yes.
So I wanted to show that. So that's what I call his lair. And that's separate from, as you say, the real world. Though I mean that's real too, but it's separate and intimate. The public world, let's say, of this town with its values, that is quite restricted in the scenography. It's all a metal world that really you have to climb onto a bench to see beyond, and where the trees are very controlled, very 18th century, like one imagines these 18th century gardens with topiary and everything, where family values are important, etc. And within this world, the Charlotte exists with not too much of a dream world about anything else. She's quite content there. But Werther coming to her and opening the windows to this other world suddenly opened up her imagination. So I wanted an intimate world for her. So we have her bedroom in which she can daydream and she can fantasize about an encounter that she could have with Werther, that in this production doesn't actually happen till later. The first big love duet between them is actually just a fantasy that she has when she realizes finally after a long time that what she's feeling is not just friendship but something else that she hadn't understood and that is festering in her and boiling up in her and burning her up.
And one of the wonderful aspects of the production is that we realize the precise moment at which she realizes that what she had assumed, perhaps naively, was a friendship is in fact a deep love.
Yes, I think it's my job as a director in any piece to lay bare the workings of a character's evolution. And I would say I have to find the moment where everything changes. There's always a pivotal moment in all our lives where something finally catalyzes a major change. And I think that one of the jobs of theater in general is to enable us to see those moments, to actually understand them.
Yes.
And so I've structured the whole production so that, yes, we can observe how things affect her and she doesn't really react to them, but there's a moment where slowly she suddenly opens her eyes to them.
It's an absolute revelation of theatre, I have to say. I've never thought of the piece in the same way, but seeing your production in rehearsal, I must say I feel that I have got under the skin of the piece in a way that I wasn't even aware the subtext existed. Another great aspect of the production for me is the final 15 minutes or so. And I'm not suggesting we tell people what it is, let them see it for themselves. But one of the problems of the piece is how do you deal with a death scene that lasts 15 minutes without it becoming theatrically static and tiresome?
Well, exactly. Unfortunately, Werther, which is a great masterpiece, has one bad reputation about it, which is that the character shoots himself and then takes 20 minutes to die singing very beautifully during that time. And he's meant to shoot himself in the head or in the heart, so it's pretty implausible usually.
Yes.
So it's a famous, difficult operatic moment. So hopefully we've come up with a solution that not only avoids that problem, but also sheds further light on what's actually happening to the characters at that point.
Well,
and in a way that I think is appropriate for what is, after all, a romantic love story.
Yeah. Francisco, your production of Werther is absolutely enthralling. Congratulations on a wonderful achievement, and thank you for coming to Lyric to give us an opportunity to either reacquaint ourselves with this masterpiece or encounter it for the first time. I've no doubt that our audiences will be completely enthralled by it.
I certainly hope so.
Thank you.